Hello and welcome to another episode of the LendAPI Partner Podcast. Today, my guest is Jay Bhattacharya, who is the head of strategic partnerships at Veem. Welcome, Jay, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Now, Jay, tell me, how did Veem get started?
So I joined Veem this year from LendAPI Global. And so the founding story that I have been told is that in 2014, our founders recognized that while tech had transformed so many aspects of business, one area that had not been innovated upon in that time frame was cross-border payments. They were still slow, expensive, complicated, and especially if you look at small and medium-sized businesses who are increasingly doing more and more work across borders. There weren't a lot of new solutions available for them. They were still stuck with the legacy solutions. So over time, we saw that need. And from the start, Veem took a very different approach to solving that problem. We blend traditional payment rails like bank transfers and cards with newer ones. And even back in 2014 had integrated aspects of the blockchain into our platform at that time, very early in the cycle. And only now some of those things are coming to fruition. This hybrid model gives businesses a quicker and more affordable and more transparent way to send and receive payments. And while it maintains the same reliability and end results of a bank transfer model, in the time between now and then, we've evolved the platform to serve businesses directly. But we also provide embedded payment tools for platforms that are looking to embed our compliance and our workflows and our payment rails. And that's the new side of the business that I've joined to grow.
So Veem saw this problem early on and already started thinking about blockchain, which I got to say, that's tip of the hat that you were there so early, and great to see that you're starting to incorporate that. Now, what is the number one use case that Veem solves for?
So taking a view from the partner lens, the use case that we solve for partners and what we see as a prevalent need in the market is making expansion for international PSPs, non-banking financial institutions, and other platforms that provide payments to businesses, helping them to expand into new and tough and regulated markets. And we make that doable without them having to land a team here, like, for example, in the US, hire expensive attorneys, file for licenses, wait years for state regulators in 50 states to issue licenses to them so they can move money around, something that takes time and costs millions and millions of dollars, and with an uncertain outcome. We have an example of one of these use cases that I love. We just announced a couple of weeks ago a partnership with a company called Skydo. They're based in India. They're regulated in India by the Reserve Bank of India, and they work with small businesses there that need to collect in the US. So these are service providers, software providers, SaaS companies, all manner of businesses, import, export, and so on. And they're able to enable all of what I would consider the traditional and preferred ways for US businesses to pay, which is not always known to international companies. And they didn't have to spend 10 years, building the plumbing and building the relationships that they need to make that happen.
So you help companies abroad come into this market and help them do that much faster than they would do if they would have to go at it by themselves. That is super helpful. Now, tell me, what is a favorite customer story?
So as I mentioned, I joined Veem from LendAPI Global, which is a large Chinese payments company. LendAPI's been around for a long time. They're a public company. They move billions and billions of dollars. They're extremely well-versed, in the movement of money across borders. They're one of the top providers of Amazon collections, for example. But when they opened their B2B business and they were serving direct import-export companies and others who are selling directly to other businesses in the US, what they found is they needed to provide payment methods beyond just here's an IBAN or an account number to which you need to send money. Americans have really interesting habits. Businesses sometimes prefer to make large payments with cards to collect rewards. In many cases, ACH debit is the preferred method by which to collect. In the end, you can improve your payment conversion rate and make your customers' experience much more enjoyable, and allow them to complete their job by giving them the maximum number of options to pay. And so by partnering with Veem, LendAPI, similar to Skydo that I mentioned earlier, they were able to expand this set of payment options for the customers of their customers in the US, we do so with both of these companies and all of our partners in such a way that we remain compliant with our respective regulators. So there is a secret sauce to this partnership around sharing of data that allows us both to report to our regulators with full understanding and transparency of the transaction. And that's the thing that I think that makes every partner kind of excited. Everybody wants to do this, but the challenge is actually bridging the different compliance and regulation regimes.
That is very important. You don't want to be out of compliance. And at the same time, what you're describing, what is very important is that you want to make it easy for customers to make payments. If it's hard,
Absolutely.
people might go like, oh, I'll do it later, or they might not do it at all, or they get very frustrated. So it is very important that you give options so that people can pick the one that they prefer.
Remember, you're collecting from a business, right? So most of the time, this is an employee of the business. And the goal of the employee of the business is to get the job done. That's the number one thing. What I always tell my teams is our goal is to help both sides of the transaction go home at 5 o'clock to have dinner with their families. And to be able to do that without introducing risk. There's an indirect proportion between payment diversity and compliance risk. And so the more options you introduce for the payer to pay, the more compliance risk potentially and other risk is introduced into the system. And I think the challenge that Veem has solved very well is the ability to introduce multitudes of local payment rails in different jurisdictions for our partners without introducing compliance risk or fraud risk.
That is a very important trade-off. Now, you were mentioning the blockchain earlier. Obviously, the number one buzz term has been AI, but very quickly, stablecoin is creeping up on that. I hear a lot about stablecoin at every conference. How does stablecoin going to change the game?
There are a number of ways that we're looking at it and integrating it. We've made a few announcements that we support partners who are doing on-ramp, off-ramp work. And I think that's the beginning and very critical to get fiat into the system. And then for companies like Veem and others that have settlement and float as part of their business, the ability for us to move money and balance pools quickly and to do so with trust and very, very clear signals of good funds changes a lot. And so what used to be FX risk, settlement timing issues, things of that nature can all be done, quickly and programmatically. And I think that fundamentally changes what used to be a very challenging model where you had to have a team on the ground in every jurisdiction in which, you needed to settle funds to. And now, you have the ability to partner with somebody and quickly and easily fund them so that they can go and make that disbursement in the local market.
So it sounded like you guys were thinking at Veem already early about this and that you're very ready for this new change that is coming. I think someone called it a freight train that's coming. So great to hear that. That's probably a good point to wrap up the episode today. Thank you very much, Jay, for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Rutger.
And until a next episode of the LendAPI Partner Podcast.